Hello, I'm Evan with New Life for Old Bikes. In this episode, we're going to service the headset on my 1976 Huffy Independence. You may know this as a fork or a steerer. The first thing I need to do is remove the front brake from the fork. This is so I can separate the stem and handlebars from the fork. The first thing we're going to do, since this particular bike has a caliper brake, is I'm simply going to remove the brake pad. I'm removing the brake pad so I'll be able to get the brake around the wheel. The next thing I'm going to do is unbolt the brake caliper from the fork. This particular bike takes 10 millimeter. You could easily use a crescent or an adjustable wrench for this job as well. If you haven't already done so, make sure you soak the quill or stem as well as the headset with penetrating oil. I did this one about 2 hours ago to make sure it would come apart very easily. This particular one takes a 13 millimeter wrench to loosen, but you could easily use a crescent or an adjustable wrench to do this job. Once you have it loosened, take a plastic or rubber mallet and give it a good whack. If it doesn't come loose, you need to go ahead and soak it for a little bit longer. At this point, just hang the handlebars on the bicycle. Just a quick note here, all the nuts and bolts we're removing today turn counterclockwise or left to remove and clockwise or right to put back on. Next thing we're going to do is loosen the bolt on the headset. I used a big adjustable wrench for this and it came right off. There's a washer underneath. Just lift that off. The next has a knurled surface on it and you can easily unscrew it with your hand. There we go. And drop the fork out of the bike. At this point, just reach in and pull out the bearings. They're actually in very good shape. A little bit dry, but they look good. Same thing with the fork. Just pull the bearings off. I wanted to show you the condition of the bearings. Overall, they're in very good condition. They just need some cleaning. The cone is also in very good shape. That just needs some cleaning as well. Next, I'm dropping my parts into a cleaner. My cleaner of choice is mineral spirits. If you have a part that is really crusty, you might want to consider lacquer thinner. If your parts are relatively clean, you could easily do this with dish detergent or laundry detergent and a toothbrush. After about 15 minutes of cleaning, the parts look real good. I'm going to take the lower cone and slide it back on the fork. Put a thin layer of grease on the upper and lower bearing cups. I use a waterproof grease since I do ride my bikes out in the rain. Next, we want to put a thin layer of grease on the bearing cones, both the top and the bottom. When greasing the bearing, make sure you get plenty of grease inside the seam. That'll prevent this bearing from ever running dry. Drop one of them in the top of the headset. Bearings go down. Once you have the second bearing well coated in grease, drop it on top of the lower cone ring, which is the cone ring on top of the fork. Next, make sure you've got some grease on the threads. You want to make sure next time it's real easy to remove. Make sure that the cables are on the correct side before you slide the fork through. Screw your top cone ring in. There you go. You want to make sure this moves smoothly but is not too tight. In fact, you probably should leave it just slightly loose so that when you tighten the bolt on top, it'll snug it up correctly. Next is the washer, and then the nut. Before we install this stem, add a little bit of grease. We want to make sure we get the binder as well as the stem itself so it doesn't get stuck. Slide it in. Make sure your handlebars are straight with the wheel before you tighten up the bolt. Then go ahead and tighten the fork. Make sure it turns smoothly but doesn't have any slack in it. The last thing we're going to do is reinstall the front brake. And reinstall the front brake pad. Clamp down on the brake with the brake handle and then snug up the brake pad. Make sure your brakes are centered and then snug up the mounting bolt for your caliper. Very good. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And don't forget, like and subscribe.